Good morning. So you're Vera, right? I'm Trucy. Trucy Wright. That's right with a W. But not right, right? We're on your side. You can tell us anything, please? Good morning. She speaks. Not bad, not bad. But I think you do better with a little smile, you know? You're so pretty. You need to sell yourself, you know? Trucy, let's take it easy for starters. Thank you for taking my case. Okay, well, that's a start, I guess. There she goes again, with the nail polish. That's great, really! It's so cultured. Want to try? Ooh, really? Ugh, girls. That's kind of sexist, Apollo. The victim, Drew Misham, was a forger, and a stolen painting was found in his studio. A life of crime, really. And maybe one that led to his death. Well, we will now begin the trial of Vera Misham. Is the judge okay? His voice is all raspy, and he's looking around all nervous like... The repercussions of today's trial will most likely be felt for a long time, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Today is the test of the juris system, and the first step toward a new order in our courts. Daddy's secret mission! The jurors will function like a jury. It is hoped their inclusion will help the courts to better reflect the people's will. Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom? 3 closed-circuit cameras watch the courtroom at all times. The jurists have access to everything that transpires. Jurists! Judge Well and Judge Cool. Now see here, Prosecutor Gavin. I was going to say that. My apologies, Judge. Jurists, today, judge today's trial coolly, if you would be so kind. The jurors are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. And we're about to find out just what effect they're going to have. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin. The details of the case, if you would. The victim is the painter Drew Misham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned. By whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Misham. Objection! There wasn't any poison in the coffee. Tongue. Someone has been doing their homework. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself. The mug? Residue was found in the room. I see. The autopsy report describes the manner of a victim's death. The court accepts this as evidence. According to this report, the victim's death was caused by atroquinine poisoning, a chemical compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage is a mere 0.002 milligrams. A touch of atroquinine in the body is the touch of the Reaper's scythe. Very well, Prosecutor Gavin. You may present your witness. I have for you today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. A journalist, no doubt. the witness but states his name and occupation.
Ah, right. Well, for starters, my name's Spark Brusher. My job is a lone observer of the world.
In other words, a freelance journalist, right?
Ahem. If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record.
Yes, Mr. Bruchel.
I dislike conclusions, specifically the jumping to aspect of conclusions. Preconceptions make park sandbox of endless desert waste. An endless desert waste, end quote.
But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday.
Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today a man with a dream. I'm offering my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. Scoop turns Mr. Bruchel into that Mr. Bruchel, end quote.
Let's hear your testimony then, shall we? A simple case, eh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out.
I visited the studio around 9 p.m. that night to do the interview, or 9 a.m. The first outsider to enter the atelier, journalistic history made, end quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time.
That does sound like a simple case. Unless... you were the one who poisoned him!
What are you saying, Judge?
Need I remind you, the cameras are rolling today. I felt the need to be a bit dramatic.
You didn't do it, did you? Me do a thing like that? Come on, that's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know, wild accusations rock courtroom, end quote.
Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him. Very well, Mr. Judge. Your cross-examination, please.
Hold it!
9 at night? Oh, it was 9 p.m. Isn't that a little late for an interview?
If the great painter Drew Misham says, come at 9, believe you me, I go at 9. The person has turned out last interview with such prolific painter.
Right. Can you tell us what it was like when you arrived?
Hold it!
You were the first reporter ever in Drew's studio?
Posterity will look back on that night as a turning point in journalistic history. A basically insignificant step for all mankind, but a giant step for that Bruchel guy, end quote. If no one on the outside ever had access to the studio, then it would serve to reason that the deed was done by an insider.
By which he means Vera did it.
So, how did this epoch-making interview go? His daughter brought us coffee right after we started.
Hold it!
Would you mind being a little more specific?
Ooh-wee, let me tell you, I enjoy a cuppa. Ooh-wee. In fact, no.
Oh, oops, I kinda missed it.
I believe I know what Forehead is driving at. This coffee the victim was served. Did anyone other than the defendant touch it?
Right, that. That's what I was going to say, really.
Well now, if you got a question to ask, you better straight up ask it. That's what I tell all the new recruits, several times if necessary. Write for a grade schooler. That's my motto. Which is to say I can only write grade school level stuff. Who touched the coffee? Dunno. I was in the back looking at the studio's equipment when she served it. And what happened next? And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote.
Hold it!
What's this about a star falling?
Star falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money, over. Zowie, you don't know? That's like a journalism code word. An important person passes away, a star falls. Get it? But there's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars could fall, really.
Does this matter?
Ooh boy, this is good stuff, good stuff. How about star breaks? Nah, lacks punch. I know. Star dies. Nah, lacks imagination. Of course, you could go with Jew dies, straight to the point. I like it.
I think we need to hear about something a little more substantial. About when Mr. Misham passed away.
Whew boy, what a scene that was. Puts his coffee mug down with a crash, right?
Yes, and then?
Then the cold finger of death touches his spine. Life flame sputters and fails. So cold was that touch, he could not but tremble uncontrollably. Actually, life's flame is a little tired. Life's river froze over. Yes, that's a go.
I think he's starting his article already. Could you describe that a little more simply?
Well, as you can imagine, I was pretty surprised. He hit the floor, as they say. Artist's seizure is final performance, end quote.
Atroquinine paralyzes the central nervous system. The body arches back like a bow. Oh, okay, that's gross. Some of us want to be able to sleep tonight.
Oh yeah? Well, I want details. Lots of juicy details.
For that, you can listen to last year's hit single, Atroquinine, My Love, by the Gaviners, available at all major music outlets. The point here is that the victim died of atroquinine poisoning. Well, Mr. Judgeless, how do you find that testimony? Very important. Well, as an account of the moment of the victim's death, I'd say it's very important. Please, add it to the testimony. Very well. The court requests the witness add this account to his testimony.
Those spasms. That was definitely death by poison.
You say it was definitely death by poison. How can you be so sure?
Hey, look, I'm a journalist. I've seen a lot of things. And I've had more than my share of experiences with so-called poisonings. Man eats fishy fish, goes bye-bye, end quote.
Food poisoning doesn't count. Should I maybe talk about something else? I feel like because they said the atroquinine takes a long time, you should have died instantaneously, but I don't know what statement he's to say to contradict that. So you drank the coffee that Vera served you too?
Of course. When someone serves you coffee, you drink it. That's what my old boss always used to say. Never get what he meant by it, though.
But you're still alive, which is to say, you didn't die.
Of course not! No point falling before you're a star. End quote.
That's not exactly what I was getting at. What were you getting at then? You know the poison was on the rim, not in the coffee.
Oh yes. There were 2 cups on the tray she brought, and one of the cups had Drew's signature painted on the side.
No chance the guest would take that one by mistake, I guess.
No.
So Brushel drank the coffee too. Doesn't look like this is going to lead to much. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time. Can you say that for sure?
For sure? Sure, I'm sure. Drew's studio isn't a big place, kiddo. I know it if someone else had come in.
Or if they had been hiding in there from before. Even if someone had been hiding in the studio, they hardly could have poisoned that mug without anyone noticing.
You think I, Spark Brushel, would miss something as obvious as that? No way!
Sure makes it sound exciting. I guess that's his job. There's only one moment we need to focus on, really. The moment when Drew Misham died? Exactly. There has to be something there. Okay, so what statement was that? I think this is the one. You say Mr. Misham had the coffee too, but did you actually see him drink the coffee?
Of course! He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger. End quote. I live in a man sees dog eat dog and writes about it world. Yet? I guess I can't say I saw him drink it, really. And one so-called sip, if that. Man put lips to mug. Drinks? End quote. The poison's quite virulent, I hear. My stomach did a so-called somersault, as I gulped down that coffee without so much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there. Some kind of so-called trick. Anyone to venture for a guess, for the record? Does this guy have a pause button? Well, Mr. Justice, did you find that testimony valuable? Maybe? I think that's it. Yeah, I immediately fell over. Your Honor, this is a vital piece of information. Please add it to the testimony. I think that's the one, because Atroquinine acts slow. Very well. The witness will add this to his testimony. Vital. Right. He had one sip, if that. The next moment, he was on the floor. So he either took a sip, or he didn't, and then fell over? Oh yes, indubitably. Just like that. Wham bam. So Mr. Mesham drank the coffee and fell over immediately. I think Bridge is telling the truth, too. No. So I'm gonna put the Atroquinine thing on that statement. But where does it say? There should be something that says Atroquinine acts slow. Not that one. Yeah, slow acting deadly poison, that's the one.
Objection!
You know what I have a problem with? A particular property of the poison used, Atroquinine. Oh, Professor Gavin was quite clear about the poison. A lethal dosage of 0.002 milligram paralyzed the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Just, would be reduced to a quivering pile. Why are you using me as an example? Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission in Prosecutor Gavin's information. An omission? Atroquinine is as virulent as he says. But death doesn't come upon ingestion. Not immediately. That's because Atroquinine is slow acting! Slow acting? What? According to one forensic scientist, it's one of the most virulent poisons, but is absorbed into the body astonishingly slow. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for adverse effects to show. If we suppose that the moment Mr. Misham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have time left to enjoy his last cup of joe. Order! What's the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony we've just heard. Well, Mr. Bristol, anything to say? On the record. Slow acting. S-L-O-W-A-C-T. It was virulent, alright. Even then it had already begun digging its claws into the journalist. He's working on a scoop.
Objection!
It's Brushel, yeah? Brushel, let's take a trip back down memory lane. Huh? Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital. You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion, end quote. I admit, it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I'll be forced to say Auf Wiedersehen to my simple case, and you'll be forced to say farewell to your article. Come again? You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent, and you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye. Scoop. Scoop. Did he just brush his nose? Oh, he was brushing his glasses. But that's just... and it's just as gross. Look, wait. Just wait a second. Just 1 second.
We're waiting! Out with it!
I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. Revival recollection, end quote. Story survival, end quote.
Attorney utterly confused, end quote.
Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I heard of poison that takes its sweet time, see?
But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Bushel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened?
You bet I am. The antidote for poisonous contradiction, end quote, you might say.
Or, I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say.
I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee.
Order!
As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony.
That Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank.
Of course I'm standing by my testimony. My dreamer exclusive rights to this story. I suppose it was too much to hope for.
What was? Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case, not him. Him? Phoenix Wright, who else? Achtung! Herr Bruschel, report for us if you would. What is it that you noticed? This court is a critical trial of the juror system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. I'm gonna skip this part, because we're gonna read about it anyway when we're doing the cross-examination. A suicide note?
Yes, he had this look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Suicide? Poor Mr. Misham. But that means Vera's innocent.
Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview?
Oh.
Very well, you may begin your cross-examination.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk.
Was there anyone at the studio other than Mr. Misham?
Well, his daughter Vera, of course.
Was anyone besides Mr. Misham and Vera present?
Not a single one. Not a cat, not a rat, not even a mouse.
The only person who didn't belong to that studio there was you, wasn't it, Mr. Bristol?
I know what you're doing. I know your game. Attorney uses classic Ramsden phenomenon ploy, end quote.
If you intend to suggest that this reporter is a suspect, I'm sure you will also intend to present evidence supporting that assertion, correct? In the meantime, let's move along, shall we?
He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope.
So he put the letter away when he saw you?
Early reporter gets worm, end quote. That's my secret.
I'm not sure I follow.
It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, and I barge in.
Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry? Really?
Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into that yellow envelope as fast as he could.
Yellow envelope?
I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one.
It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice? I wonder. It does have the ring of something important. Yes, added to the testimony. The defense finds the testimony vital, Your Honor. Very well. Please add it to the testimony, then.
Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. It was a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the crime scene.
And you saw him seal this yellow envelope with the letter?
Hey, don't look at me like that. I saw what I saw.
Apollo, you think this might be our big break? Yeah. What I need is to show some decisive evidence now. Yeah, the red envelope. But I want to see the other stuff.
I thought nothing of it at the time, of course.
You didn't think anything might be wrong at the time?
Hey, when I go in for an interview, that's what I'm there to do. interviewer finds looking more effective than caring. End quote. So what about now? Thinking back on it, did you sense anything strange in Mr. Mission's behavior? Well, yeah, that's why I'm telling you all this to begin with.
Very well, continue with your testimony.
Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note?
Hold it!
A suicide note?
Well, yeah, don't call me or anything. I'm just saying it's a possibility, you know?
So you didn't actually check the letter?
Of course not, it was sealed. Contents of can unknown until can is opened, end quote.
You can always check the label.
Do you think Mr. Misham was writing a suicide note?
No. If he was, that would solve the case in a jiffy.
Kinda makes me wonder about that letter.
Yep, because it was not yellow.
Objection!
As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope! Gross. Prosecutor Gavin.
Yes?
Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But a forehead. It's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Brushel?
I can explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get that letter in an envelope pronto. Get out of sight, out of my beady eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away.
What about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. I'm gonna say, I think it wasn't to him, right? Yeah, this was to him, not he wasn't writing it. So impossible. That's impossible. Ah, I like your expression, so full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham. Oh? Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself.
I've been scooped.
Order, order, order! Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court?
Oh my. How could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots, end quote.
I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel.
Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his drawer for something.
His desk drawer?
Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp, end quote.
A stamp? Whatever for?
Well, to mail his letter, what else? And then, why yes, I think I saw him put it in his letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope, and he put it in that box.
Well, apparently this yellow... Was it this yellow letter had nothing to do with the case?
Oh, how I wish it did.
Just think, if that were a suicide note, what a story.
Star writes suicide note in front of reporter. Falls, end quote.
Ahem. As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said... Yes, Your Honor? It makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money. So, this was from 7 years ago, yeah?
So, am I finished? Here, I mean? Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing.
I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that, rather unique face.
Ah, come on! Attorney has active imagination. Little else. End quote.
Even I notice something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. You know, I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about. Judge has active imagination, end quote. Please, continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story.
Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here. Usually.
God, that's so disgusting. Brushing his tongue and his glasses. Ugh, same brush.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably has something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
So you threatened to go to the press with this story? That's how you got your interview? Blackmail?
Well, yes. I mean, no. It wasn't black. I mean, I'm not Irk.
Something wrong, Mr. Brushel?
Look, this is my story, my tidbit. Journalist's info is livelihood, end quote.
I see.
Well, you had me chatting away in here. What's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to press while I'm going to waste.
The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. A certain case 7 years ago. Wait, 7 years ago? So my bracelet's acting up. Okay. Put to get a thumbs up on the interview. The victim, Drew Misham, had an aversion to reporters?
Boy, I guess. Not even my considerable charms did much for him. Till I finally got my thumbs up, that is.
Maybe you can elaborate on that for us.
Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote.
Exactly what sort of story was this?
Oh, a little one, like I said. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing in between, end quote. Might have suggested I had a lead on this particular story. I didn't threaten or cajole or nothing, honest.
So a suggestion was enough to get an interview? Mr. Misham must have really wanted to keep it under wraps. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. A certain case 7 years ago? Tell us, what case?
Let me state one thing, Mr. Attorney, and you can quote me on this. I can't talk about that case.
Why not?
It's about journalistic pride and staunchness and credibility and connections. Journalist reveals sources only over his dead body, end quote. So what'll it be? Gonna strangle me? Dead men don't tell tales, Mr. Attorney.
Sounds like you're determined not to talk. Our chances of breaking his will aren't looking good. That red envelope probably has nothing to do with it. On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other, this letter. What makes you think the two are related?
I was just saying it's possible. Call it reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You going to pick all of them apart? Be my guest.
All of them? No, just the incredibly suspicious ones. I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Misham?
Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
Just how amazing was Mr. Misham's talent?
Huh? Hoo-wee, boy! I mean, hey, he's a star, man, a star. The flow of his brush is like a great undulating river across the canvas. Artist paints light up studio-like sun, end quote.
This guy is full of wacky gestures. That one just now was wackier than usual. He looks kind of nervous to me, Apollo. Definitely. I'm sensing something different than before here.
Maybe it's time to bring out you-know-what. That testimony left a bad taste in my mouth. It all makes sense. Nothing jumps out as ridiculous. I wonder what this story he's talking about is. It must have been good to get an interview with a famous recluse like that. Something powerful enough to drag Drew Misham out of hiding. I wonder, maybe it had something to do with Mr. Misham's art? Alright, so where do you make weird gestures? So you're smiling. Let's see, brushing your head. I'm just blinking, brushing your head. Not that one. I feel like it's somewhere here. Oh, I think his armpits get sweaty. No, maybe not. Did it just change right there? Did his armpits just get all sweaty? Right there? Yeah. There it was. Yeah, his armpit got sweaty there.
Gotcha!
Sweat much, Mr. Brushel?
Yeah, well, a man can't help his glands, you know?
It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, he suddenly began to sweat buckets.
Ah!
You're hiding something about his talent.
What? That's ridiculous.
Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. Just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. This one? No? This one? This one.
Take that!
Oh, no, not that. Oh, he's a forger, so where's the thing that shows the forger? This one? No? Oops. Autopsy report. Where does it say he's a forger? I guess it's this? I guess it was this one. This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of 100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. Business of making forgeries! Woo! That is all, Your Honor.
Everyone, please, everyone. Can we keep this private? Please! This is my story, my scoop!
Forgery? That's a serious crime.
Drew Bisham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back.
Another art meaning forgery?
Drew Bisham was talented, alright. Talented in making precise, detailed fakes. In fact, that certain criminal elements were quick to discover.
Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about...
Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence.
Oh... I mean, forging artwork is illegal too.
The rumor started circulating 7 years ago.
So, 7 years ago? So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of 100,000 was for...
Exactly. Forged evidence, tidy profit, end quote.
Order, order, order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life.
This is my chance.
So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about.
Objection!
This is my first time hearing of this criminal bird. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation.
Objection!
But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here.
Objection!
But there's no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course. Hey, hey, hey! The only thing I poison is a pen when I'm writing reviews.
Mr. Brushel, your testimony at this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen.
What are you talking about? Marjorie Journalism is rock solid. Journalism is so solid you could stand an elephant on it, end quote.
In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over.
Apollo, what's he talking about?
The cross-examination showed Mr. Breschel didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there are no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera, that's what.
This next testimony is our last chance.
Mr. Breschel, your testimony, please.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted as much as herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. Nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. That's a lie. The letter left. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
A nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without a room for doubt.
Ah, shucks. Really think so?
I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice. You may begin your final cross-examination.
Right.
I have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it.
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it. How many times have we heard that one forehead? The poison reached its victim via that coffee mug. And from where did that coffee come from? Not to beat a dead horse again, but perhaps you could fill us in. I'm on it. You need a horse beat? I'm your man. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted as much as herself. And you witnessed her pouring the coffee? Of course you didn't witness it. She came in with that tray. The coffee was already poured and a steaming. Let us not forget the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed. What? That last part was just a little joke.
I'm not even going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case.
It's the letter. It's just the stab. The only thing that touched Drew's lips was the interview was that mug.
You sure about that?
Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. One of those candies might have been poisoned.
Yet, at the time of autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway.
Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee?
Well, Mr. Justice, you have some proof.
The possibility is there. I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it. Not yet.
The possibility isn't going to cut it. Not now.
Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than that coffee.
I don't think it yet. It can't be proven. Oh, I guess I had to click it.
I do believe our little forehead is growing up.
Pity, we like the rash, youthful forehead best. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. First things first, I better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again. Yeah, okay. Alright, I can keep cross-examining.
And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing.
That's a lie. The envelope. Not one thing? You're sure?
Yep, sure as can be.
Well, one exception. One exception? What?
Journalist Spock's Breschel does interview. Leave studio. End quote. Come on. It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still.
Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night?
I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually.
A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Nishan? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the crime scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Breschel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, he went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Oh. But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah, yes, intriguing. So, an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Nishan. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then, the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything, forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. It's exactly the opening I've been looking for. Now I can do the stamp thing. A letter was put in the post from the studio, but I hardly think that matters. Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you were hiding that fact from us. Yes, well, actually... I don't argue the possibility that a letter disappeared from that studio. But forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right. How Mr. Nishan was poisoned, I know. But Mr. Breschel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now. I'm starting to think. Let's keep thinking, Apollo. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. You say clearly as though it were obvious. This claim that the defendant poisoned the victim is really conjecture. Yes, well, you see, in my business, it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. A bad habit, I know. Yes, well, actually, I guess it's more a case of ridiculing journalists sounds wrong, end quote. The court is forced to agree with you. Please refrain from wild conjecture. Understood loud and clear. Only I could believe that. What do you think, Apollo? Everything he's saying seems so not flawed. Well, that's kind of what you want from a testimony, really. I need to keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Nishan killed? Vera poured the coffee, that's not going to change. But that coffee didn't kill him. I need to find what did and prove it. The stamp. So either I do it from here, or this one. I'm gonna do this one. Nope. Okay. So probably the other one. Oh, I have to press that statement. Duh. Mr. Nishan ingested that poison via route other than that coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, forehead, not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. But what did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope.
I saw him writing a letter, I did.
Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume?
Of course,
Which means that envelope had a stamp on it.
a stamp.
Ah. As we all know, stamps come with dry glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it.
By licking the stamp.
Objection!
No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age.
Objection!
Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all.
Objection!
Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait, how does that explain the atroquinine on the rim of the coffee mug?
Objection!
If he licked the back of a poison stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth? Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Mishan. Mr. Mishan poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But that doesn't... does it? Recall, if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Uh-oh. His nose is picking up another scent.
As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, Mr. Mishan sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp, end quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one.
Maybe he'd just run out? Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps are found. It makes proving the stamp used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. What is your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp?
Take that!
Oh, this really is a cute little frame. And by little, I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So that. Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atroquinine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You aren't saying. Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order, order, order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! But Prosecutor Gavin, why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck.
You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see?
What, Mr. Bushel? And please stop jittering around like that.
The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too, end quote.
So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him.
Objection!
Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to Gaviner's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again. Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail? Now, you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters. A stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof! Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened, but I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. Enclosed stamp, Your Honor. In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison, on the stamp, lick, gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have, Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, yeah? Is that what you would have us believe, really? Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that then became the murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see. Very well, I move to. It's not nice to pick on the Fraulein Clavier. Why are you here? Emma! Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fraulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you out of all this mess you're making of this case. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope easy. Care to explain yourself, Fraulein Detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right! The poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Ah, found it. Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's atroconine residue. I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Now 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last. Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why did this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out. Figured what out?
He realized that the person who sent the letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in the frame. Or maybe he just wanted to keep the stamp. You're still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razor to the Brushel, claim the scoop as mine. His name is Spark Razor Tooth Brushel. Spark Brushel. Spark Brush. Brushel Spark? I don't know. I mean, I get toothbrush is the pun. But Spark? Spark Razor? Razor Spark? I don't know. Maybe it's like a toothbrush brand or something. Drew Misham killed in cold blood by sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Order, order, order! I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit, this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth 7 years ago. Stamp is ticket straight to afterlife, end quote. Uh-oh. I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo! I think we just won. Very well. This court finds the defendant...
Objection!
Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for Gaviner shows are invalid after 2 weeks. What doesn't make sense any other way? It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Air Forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? And explain that he must have realized it was poisoned. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed the trap and put the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this. But this begs the question, why 7 years later did he use a stamp on the night of the murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years, and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprayed the trap on himself? Wah. Or maybe he just never knew it was poison in the first place, just wanted to keep the stamp. People do that, they collect stamps. While I admit this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo! I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you.
Objection!
Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing ever existed.
Objection!
What about the atroquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree. That does seem to be atroquinine residue. But Air Forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. Urk. I believe we've come to a conclusion again. Apollo, were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be a coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice? Yes, Your Honor. Let's review the thoughts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison atroquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope.
An envelope that left the scene of crime without the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Misham knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right. Which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The trace of Aquanine. The envelope, the frame, and Drew Mission's mysterious death. It all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, a fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake, and your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off the poison trail is none other than... I don't know, which one's fake? Maybe the frame? This frame is the fake clue? Without a doubt, Your Honor.
Objection!
Wasn't it you who presented this evidence to the court? Oh. Hold on a second, Apollo. The poison on the envelope, that frame, and the coffee mug. They're all connected somehow. Oh, right. I can hear already. It looks like the fake was you, Air Forehead. We can flog ourselves later, Apollo. Now's the time for thinking. Fake clue that's thrown us off the poison trail is none other than this Drew Misham. The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself.
Objection!
Congratulations, you completely lost me, and I'm pretty lost too. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger? Makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue. Fakes. Forgeries. Ah! I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again. 7 years ago, our forger sniffed the trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Oh, Vera is the forger. Drew Misham is not the forger. Here we are again. The victim was a fake. One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order, order, order! So you're telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake? Well, if he was a fake, who was the real forger? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was. If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was... Vera! There can only be one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger, known as Drew Misham, is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order, order, order. What a twist! Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb even for you. I kinda agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Mishams, and Vera Mishams. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility, by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well, fascinating. Vera Misham, you've been paying attention to the trial so far. Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Fraulines, believe me, though they usually talk to me too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes. So the forger, Drew Misham, was you? Yes, it was me. What? The court was in an uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess.